too late, right?
No, I agree with what you're saying. That was a real frustrating time back then because there was really not a lot of, I always thought about, should I move out west? I went to New York just recently and I almost moved up there. I was so excited to be around that community and be around like-minded people. I was pumped. I stayed out with them for 4 days straight, just meeting hundreds and hundreds of people. I was in New York for 4 days and I met more people than I know in Birmingham. I've been here my whole life.
Yeah. It's an interesting thing because it's not always the communities within the communities in the kind of a startup and entrepreneurial community here are not readily apparent outside of the depot, just because there aren't a lot of places for them to kind of there aren't natural places for them to kind of congregate. But what I think ends up happening is once you get 4, 5, 6 folks that are fairly involved, you can get plugged in anywhere. But it's not as readily apparent, for sure. The thing about Susan, and I don't think a lot of people know, we didn't talk about it last week, but one of the things is she, when she had the depot, she had like 5 other jobs. So she was doing 2 different things for UAB, something else for the Chamber of Commerce, this, and then like 1 other thing, and it was unbelievable.
Every time I come out,
Right. I want to shake her hand and meet her. I admire people like that start something from nothing. So. I really admire everybody, but what I'm saying is just to know that she was so far ahead of her time, just really blows my mind.
Yeah.
That Susan one they talked about last week, the one that started all of this around 1987.
Style book question. Is it University of Alabama, Birmingham? University of Alabama at Birmingham? I don't feel like you're ever like net zero. Like I think that if you take one off, the one gets added.
Look in my mind like, this year.
And Mickey and I were just having a conversation. Man, it's too much. I express myself too. Yeah, me too. And he's like, didn't you just sign up for a bunch of free screens from EDPA? 15 companies you got to review? He's like, oh yeah. I'll tell you what, I do. I feel badly, but into this year, I'm totally hermit. I just and I can't do any of the stuff I want to do as well as I want to do. You know what I mean? So it's like I gotta start picking my spots. Yep.
I'm not being fair to you.
I think the thing is you've been very involved with Randy or figure out because once he starts getting his own draft, instead of being wide and deep, he starts getting 3 feet.
That's the challenge, right? It's like you got 10% bandwidth left, you fill it up, and you got get some protocols like I have the really juicy stuff.
And there's no way to know that when you committed to the other stuff that took all the bandwidth.
It's like queuing theory
Yeah, I feel like that's a corollary to like chaos theory. It's like, wait, do you really know? Sometimes we're on our own versus
All right, so we're gonna go get started because I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Sanjay, the workshop is starting at 6:30.
Yes.
With Rebecca, right?
Yeah.
So for those of you who don't know about that, really great opportunity. Rebecca's going to come in and do a workshop talking about trying to live a zero waste lifestyle and what that means and how that happens. There's some pretty intriguing stuff with that. Recently, I don't know if you saw this or not, I think it was either NPR or, no, it was, anybody ever watch that Sunday, what's that CBS Sunday Morning? Has a bunch of feature stuff on, it's not really hard news, right, whatever. And one of the things that they had this family that was a zero waste family. And she literally took out a Ziploc bag, not actually a Ziploc bag because they don't have any plastic, but something that looked like a Ziploc bag. And in that bag was trash. She said, this is 100% of all the trash that I created last year that couldn't be recycled. And it fit in a Ziploc bag. And she has kids. And I was like, time out. There's just no way that's, I mean, I think I create that much non-recyclable trash before breakfast.
Right.
You know what I mean? The whole year. Anyway, pretty intriguing stuff. So let me walk you through kind of this if you haven't been to one of these events before, and just tell you what's going on. The microphones are here, obviously. That's not for amplification. That's just we're recording a podcast called This Has to Work. So if anybody's interested in this podcast or any of the other ones that we've done, and we've had some pretty good guests on there, it's thishasToWorkPodcast.com. Which will take you to a Podbean website, which is where all of our episodes are, not only for this series, which is our co-working night series, but for all of the episodes that we've done prior to now. So for the first, we'll call it 20 minutes, I'm going to interview Anthony, all right? And during that time, we're not going to take any questions or anything like that from the audience. It doesn't mean this is, you have to treat this like, little mice and be super quiet. React, laugh, gasp, right? I don't know. Jump up and down, whatever you're going to do. You don't have to be quiet during that. Just not going to field questions from the audience. We will, however, leave time at the end so that you will be able to ask questions. Any follow-up questions that you had, stuff that I missed, stuff that you just want to get more into, then we will absolutely use time for that. However, in the beginning, when I introduce Anthony, I do want you to make a bunch of noise and make it sound like there's 500 people in here. Fair enough? You guys good with that? Any questions? No, you don't have to sign a waiver because I'm not asking you to sign one. You're not all here, right? All right, anyway, okay. I know you're rolling. You don't have to tell me. Welcome into This Has to Work. I'm Matt Hoddle, and I've been told I'm your host for this episode. Ted Buttman is producing his tail off over there on the board, trying to make me sound a little bit like I know what I'm doing. But more importantly, joining us tonight is Dr. Anthony Hood, Professor of Management at the University of Alabama at Birmingham. Anthony is not only a professor, but an abbreviated list of organizations in which he's involved includes Innovate Birmingham, the City of Birmingham's Industrial Development Board, the Historic Civil Rights District Task Force, Birmingham Change Fund, Community Investment Network, Birmingham Education Foundation, the Woodlawn Foundation, Green Resource Center for Alabama, the Collat School of Business's Research Advisory Committee, UAB's Center for the Study of Community Health, and yet he finds time to be a husband, father of 2 lovely daughters, and occasionally sleeps more than 2 hours at a time. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Anthony Hood. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for being here. So just to set the background a little bit, you're a professor, a community activist, published researcher, faculty fellow, economic developer, mentor. What did I miss?
I'm an impeccable spades player, Alabama fan.
Yes.
West Side representative.
Nice. Those are good. Good to add those. So one of the things that I think is really important for people to understand is, in my experience, most tenured professors are perfectly happy to write grant proposals, dig into their research, and publish. Right? But not you. It seems your pursuits have only accelerated since you were recently tenured. And so what is motivating you to pursue all of these service opportunities?
Well, I mean, actually, this is why a lot of us actually go into academia in the first place, is that we actually want to make a difference. We want to make an impact in our communities, and we figure the best way to do that is through the classroom and through the resources of the university. It turns out that I think sometimes our incentive systems are not aligned with reality. And so you have this thing about tenure where essentially at most universities you have 5 to 6 years to collect data, publish articles in journals that nobody outside of academia reads.
Right.
And then you sit before a panel of people at the department level, and they either give you a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Thumbs up means you go to the next level. Thumbs down means you're likely out of a job, and then you have to find a job at another university, and then it starts all over again. So it goes from department level, team of your peers say, yes, Anthony's done really good research. Then it goes to the school level, another committee. Then it goes to the dean, then it goes to the provost, and then the president, and then the board of trustees, and then they bestow promotion and tenure upon you. And then you get a chance to do what you've always wanted to do for the past 10 years, is I actually want to make a difference.
Right. Well, it was interesting. You recently posted this on social media, and I want to get into this just for a second because I thought it was really insightful. You had talked about of all the things that you get involved with and all of the different community aspects, economic development. We're going to get into that in a little bit in some detail. You talked about nobody ever asked me about how many articles have I published, how many journals have I been a part of, how many committees have I sat on, and all of that stuff. So talk a little bit about that, because I think it dovetails nicely with what you're talking about, which is for you, there seems to be a whole other set of, for your lack of a better term, the word you use, like incentives, right? There's another reason to do that. So is that a good thing or a bad thing that people don't ask about?
I think it's a great thing. I mean, I think it just speaks to, sometimes the misalignment of what goes on in academia versus what people actually care about outside of academia. And so in academia, I mean, it can be very snooty. People are like, well, how many publications do you have? What are you working on? Is that an A-level journal? And what's the impact factor? And so to you guys, that means nothing, and so it's somewhat frustrating. I get it. It's part of the socialization of becoming a true academic. But going back to your earlier point, this is the things that I'm doing now. I've always done them. I've just done them in a very clandestine way. Mm-hmm. Because if you ever come off as being seen as not a true academic, then all you need to do is tick off the wrong faculty member, and they put a poison pill, in the committee. This is the cynical Anthony talking to me. That one faculty member puts in the poison pill, and then you don't get tenure, and then what?
Yeah.
So tenure really gives you the nice security blanket to now be a lot more risky, dare I say innovative, in how you actually manage your career.
Yeah, that's a great insight. So you've been really consistent and very active around your work for inclusion in economic development in all capacities,
Yeah.
especially in Birmingham.
Yeah.
What does inclusion mean to you, and where do you see our greatest needs for improvement?
That's loaded.
That's a kind of a big question.
It is a big question. All right, so let me peel back a few layers. I think typically when people think about economic development, they often think, what is the government doing for us? The government needs to come and put a grocery store in my neighborhood. Why can't we have a brewery in our community, what have you? And I think people need to understand that there are limits upon what government and municipalities can do. At the end of the day, we're in America. This is a capitalist society. Companies can decide to invest in certain areas and disinvest in other areas. So for me, the inclusion piece means how can we incentivize business owners to take quote unquote risk, but take intelligent risk in maybe communities that have suffered from disinvestment. I think government can create the environment through which that incentivizes investment. But I think at the end of the day, companies have to invest, and then people have to invest by where they actually send their kids, where they buy property. And so those are the things that I advocate for is, okay, everybody wants to be in Avondale, Crestwood, or what have you, but what about Hensley? What about Bush Hills? Selfishly, because that's where I'm from. But a lot of the properties that are in my neighborhood, you can find those same properties on the other side of town. In my neighborhood, you can buy for $75,000. Same square footage in Crestwood may be $275,000. So to me, as a rational economic actor, if I can save $200,000 on property, I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
And so it's just mind-boggling sometimes the investment decisions I think that a lot of us make.
So one of the things that, and I've had this conversation with a lot of people, but one of the things that's really interesting, I mean, Birmingham really is 99 neighborhoods. Like, that's not invented. You know what I mean? Like,
It is invented.
Well,
it's very arbitrary.
Agreed, but I think that each neighborhood seems to have its own kind of characteristics, its own, set of circumstances. And what's interesting to me is why Crestwood, right? Why not College Hills? Why not right? Other areas, and that's the question I was. So is it a question of inclusion? Does it come down to inclusion in neighborhoods that maybe aren't the Crestwood or the Avondales, or what else is going on there? Again, another big loaded question.
Again,
sure.
a big loaded question. You know, in some communities it comes down to schools. You know, is Avondale Elementary a quote unquote better school than Bush Hills Academy? You know, that's subjective. And so oftentimes people make purchasing decisions based on schools when we're talking about real estate. But at the end of the day, there are no neighborhoods that I've seen where people say, hey, you can only buy over here if you're making at least $75,000, or you're white, or you're male, or you're heterosexual, homosexual. It's just people buy where they want to buy. You know what I mean? And there are no restrictions on who can buy where.
So it's just economic forces. It's just
Economic
self-selection.
forces, the only caveat to that is when we come down to our banking system. And when banks have been accused of engaging in things like redlining, or turning down people for mortgages. So I don't know if you guys just saw the article, I think it was in BBJ today, where the city of Birmingham ranks the highest in the nation at the number of people who are turned down for mortgages.
That's unbelievable.
But it's true.
But you see it, right? Yeah.
I think Lending Tree was the one that.
Let me rephrase that. It's really sad. Maybe not unbelievable is the right word.
It is sad.
So let's dial in a little bit, because one of the things that I think is really relevant not only to this audience, but also kind of where we're standing right now and sitting right now doing this interview. But I'm really, you know, something that has become really apparent to me is the limited access to technology. That technology and access to good technology, whether it's high-speed internet, whether it's literally laptops, computer terminals, right, software, whatever the case may be, that is not distributed, you know, equally among all the different communities. And what factors do you believe are directly related to that lack of access of technology in helping to develop, you know, the economic benefit more holistically in the city?
I don't know. You know, at the end of the day, I mean, I assume you're talking about maybe public schools.
I think public schools, public libraries, access to technology that just because they don't have it in their home, where can they go and access and participate from a technology standpoint?
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, Birmingham does struggle with income inequality, and we do have gaps, income gaps. And so the people who have typically have better technology. They have better broadband access because they can afford to pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
They can afford to buy a bigger house, which now you have more property taxes that then goes into buying better funding better schools and funding the technology that goes into those schools. So yeah, your suburban districts are going to have more funding, you know, because of the property value, so they can invest in things like technology and access.
Yeah. What role do you see the business community playing in trying to, you know, maybe lessen that gap or improve that access? Do they have a role to play, and if so, what does that look like?
Absolutely. Again, we're in a capitalist society.
Sure.
If you want things to change, oftentimes it's going to come from business, and business can drive a lot of change. So how that normally looks is corporate philanthropy. You know, it's them donating money to this cause, that cause, or adopting a school, adopting a neighborhood. So businesses can push that way. When we start talking about education, I think businesses can force change in like higher education. Say, you know what, Auburn, we're not gonna hire your graduates because they're not coming out with the technological skills we need in our workforce. And so we're gonna go down the street to Alabama. That's gonna get the attention of some people, and then they're gonna say, you know what, we need to add more technology to the core curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so businesses can drive that. Or if there's a fundraising campaign. Business says, yeah, we'd love to give you a $5 million endowment, but we'd like to see these changes.
Yeah. So shifting gears just a little bit, entrepreneurship as a course of study at colleges and universities is relatively new. It's not brand new, but it's relatively new. What are university programs getting right, and what are they getting wrong in their attempts to teach this, for lack of a better term?
Good question. I think some programs focus more on entrepreneurship as starting a business. I think other programs focus on entrepreneurship as it is a mindset.
Okay.
Entrepreneurship is a mindset, and it's also a process. It's really a process of how do we approach problems and decision making. And I think the programs that focus more so on the process and the mindset create more avenues for students, because most students are not going to start a business. Although they go through your certificate program, the minor, major, MBA level, they're just not going to start a business. And even if they start a business, what's the chances that those businesses are going to be successful long term? I think a good win is a student goes through your entrepreneurship program, they get exposed to it, and now that makes them a better employee for the corporations. Because corporations continue to tell me, we need students that have an entrepreneurial mindset, that can work in a team environment, that are leaders, that are adaptable, flexible, and that are self-motivated. I think those are all characteristics of good entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And then they want somebody that's going to come in and not just say, you know what, things are messed up around this workplace, somebody needs to fix it. You know, the entrepreneurs are saying, yeah, something is messed up, and I've taken the liberty to write up a business case for how we fix this. We would increase revenues, reduce expenses, or something like that. And then that may turn into some type of spin-off within that organization. So I think if we can just teach the process, we will create more entrepreneurship, we'll create more entrepreneurs, but we'll also create more social entrepreneurs, those people that see something in their communities, and then will have the tools through which they can actually impact change.
You know, that's a really good point. A lot of the most successful people I see in kind of that entrepreneurship kind of skill set tend to be really good civic leaders as well. Like whether that's independent of, and I don't just mean elected officials, but I mean in service work, right? Because they kind of approach those problems the same way that an entrepreneur would approach like any problem, right? Which is solutions oriented, like, hey, if I need to get here, I can think backwards and we can go through all the different, thought processes. But
I mean, literally the way that we have been teaching entrepreneurship in the last 5 years is around Lean Startup, Business Model Canvas. That is literally a tool, a framework through which no matter what problem that you're facing, okay, who's the customer, the client, who's ever having a problem, what's the problem, what's the value proposition, how are we going to market it, what are the costs. It is a very quick and dirty thing of, if you're talking about blight, if you're talking about high blood pressure, diabetes, if you're talking about the next ship app, it doesn't matter. Whatever the challenge or the opportunity is, we now have a set of tools through which we can address that. And I think if we just teach the tools and the process, people will be a lot better off.
now you literally just got off a plane a few hours ago from North Dakota. You're spending time in a bunch of different environments where they are either teaching or supporting or developing these same skill sets that you're talking about. What have you seen out there that you're really excited about from an approach standpoint of working with these, up and coming or even developing entrepreneurs?
I think the universities that are creating more innovation outposts, where they realize, you know what, if we try to innovate inside of our business school, it's going to be crushed by the bureaucracy of, I might get in trouble for this, but faculty members have so much, but they can argue over so little. I worked in corporate America for 10 years before I went in academia. I was an engineer at AT&T, and I saw some of the most petty stuff and the most, political gamesmanship that you can ever see. And when I left corporate America, I was like, oh my God, I'm so glad I'm leaving that to go to academia. And nobody warned me.
That's funny.
How hyper petty and political it could be. And I think when you try to innovate in entrepreneurship inside of these bureaucracies, it gets crushed by it. And I think that's the reason why we need to have innovation labs like this, to where we can go and be rogue somewhere else and nobody knows what we're doing. And by the time they figure it out, it's too late. We've already disrupted the system.
Sure.
Companies do that too, right? Inside of corporations, they have these innovation outposts where we set up some facilities somewhere else, and then people forget about it.
Yeah.
Until they disrupt the system.
So as a professor of management, I know you do a lot of classes on entrepreneurship, and you get a fresh, crop of students every semester. And so what are the common preconceived notions that you get from your students about entrepreneurship? Like, what does it mean to them?
Yeah, I think a lot of them think it means starting a business, which in a lot of ways it does. So let me back up. I think we need to be very clear of the fact that innovation and entrepreneurship are two different things. So I like to make sure that we understand 4 processes: creativity, innovation, entrepreneurship, strategy. Those are 4 different processes. They are related and they work hand in hand, but they're different. So yes, creativity is really the generation of a new idea. But just because you generate a new idea, that doesn't mean that you actually do anything with it. How many of you guys have friends that they come up with new ideas every day, but they don't do jack with them? Those are creative people. You know, no shame to the creative people. Just some people just very creative. There's some people who are innovators. Innovators are people that get shit done, right? So they may not have creative insights, but they can take somebody else's creativity and actually implement it. And then once you implement it, then you need to come up with a sustainable business model upon which you can make it repeatable, scalable. That's the entrepreneurship. And then after you come up with something that's repeatable and scalable, the strategy comes in is how do we actually compete in a very crowded marketplace? And so I think the schools that are getting it right understand that these are 4 different processes and they invest across the spectrum. And now you have a continuum of business.
Okay, very good. So they come in, they have these notions, and then they, you know, let's say that the majority of them say, well, I'm going to take what I learned here and I'm going to start a business. What are some of the things and what are some of the ways that you work with them to kind of help them understand what's in front of them from either that perspective or to say, hey, listen, we need to think about it in these buckets and the way to apply these skills even if it isn't starting a business? Yeah. Is that just the course of study? What are you finding in those classrooms and in those environments that are helping people understand that?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, it's what we call when you start up, you got to get out of the building. I think all too often in our current educational system, we think that learning actually has to occur when you have butts in seats for 2.5 hours a week for 14 weeks, and then that means that somebody learned something. That doesn't mean jack. So I think it's actually taking people and say, okay, who's your customer? That's your customer? Okay, you go out and talk to 10 people this week, come back, tell me what you learned. And typically their assumptions were wrong. I'm interested in the assumptions. I think a lot of our students are wondering, they are worried about getting the right answer. And in entrepreneurship, there are no right answers. The only right answer is, did you get out, did you talk to somebody, did you learn something, did you challenge your assumptions, and did you go back out and try to validate that? And so helping people understand that entrepreneurship is about hypothesis testing. What is my hypothesis? Let me go out and collect enough data points so that I can either validate my hypothesis or reject it and then go back and do it again.
So
that's what we got to do.
So I got to ask you this question because we talk with folks. You and I both talk with folks in similar circumstances all the time. And one of my biggest frustrations is we tell them that, right? You say, well, I've got an idea. Great, validate it, right? Here are 5 different ways you can go validate it. And they go, well, my mom thinks it's a good idea, and my brother said he'd buy it, right? And then you go, okay, no, you need more, and they come back with 5, and you're like, no, you need like 25, and then after 25, you've got to figure out the next 25, and the next 25. There doesn't seem to be as much energy to your point about, hey, I got a great idea, and I'm really excited about my idea, but when it comes to doing the validation, the grunt work, the front end stuff, that's where you see a lot of kind of energy fall out of the idea. Do you see that as a good thing, a bad thing, or just part of the process?
Well, I think the challenge is that oftentimes entrepreneurs, quote unquote, I'm going to use air quotes, entrepreneurs are the people that develop the technology. And the technology could be, I'm a cook, and I like to cook food or what have you, or I like to write code, that's great. But then you start talking about running a business, a lot of people don't want to do that. I just want to write good code. Yeah. Okay? And so when you start talking about validating hypotheses and going and talking to customers, they don't want to do that. I just want to cook.
Right.
And that's why entrepreneurship really is a team sport. Is that you may have an idea, but then you need to go out and get the business person kind of help you take that business to market. I would say the other thing, although entrepreneurship is relatively new, the way that we've treated entrepreneurship over the past 20 years, it's about writing a business plan. And so most of the people that come to me is like, hey, I got this idea for a new business or a new nonprofit. Can you help me write a business plan? And I just flat out 5 years ago, like, I'm not writing another business plan in my life.
Yeah.
Because most people, they want you to write the business plan for them. This is my idea. I'll pay you. Tell me how much you will charge me to write a business plan. I can't write a business plan for you because now you've outsourced actually talking to customers to figure out what do you actually have.
Right. So, is there? You talked about skill sets, and you mentioned an attribute, talking about being adaptable, right, as a person. What are the attributes you see in over all of these different students and all the different organizations that you're involved with? What are some of those common attributes you see? So adaptability, I would agree with you. I think it's huge, right? Your ability to be like, I really love this idea and it's not going to work. And instead of me, cratering myself emotionally, I'm going to pick myself up and I'm going to go with the next idea. What other attributes do you see that you think are common traits among successful entrepreneurs or successful innovators?
You know, the caveat to being adaptable, I think you do have to have a healthy level of stubbornness.
Yeah, I agree.
You have to be stubborn, you know. There have been times where I've given people advice,
Yeah.
and people have ignored my advice, and they've been successful. Like, oh, I'm glad you ignored me.
Well, we're not right all the time.
We are not, you know. So I've been humbled
Right.
in telling people, yeah, I don't think that's gonna work, and then they go and do it, and it actually works.
I've had conversations with people, and tell me what you think about this, is like talking about stubbornness, because in one time you say, yeah, be flexible, be adaptable, roll with the punches, iterate, and do all those things, which is very lean, you know, mentality. But at the same time, you also have to say, yeah, but you need to be selectively stubborn. Like, you need to pick the hill you're gonna die on, and be okay with that. And when everybody tells you you're crazy, you're crazy, you're crazy, you get one hill to die on, right? And picking that one to be stubborn about. And so telling Anthony, no, I don't agree, this is the hill I'm dying on, or telling Matt, no, you're wrong, I'm gonna go with this. But you can't do too many of those. Do you think that's fair?
Say it again.
Like being stubborn about a lot of things. You just have to be
Oh, yeah.
selectively stubborn, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're too stubborn, I mean, I think you run everybody off.
Right.
You know, there are a lot of people, I give them advice, they ignore it, and they come back and ask another question, I give them advice, they ignore it. And then like after the third time, like, dude, don't ask me another question, like I've already told you, like, you're not gonna listen to it anyway. I think I'm talking to my little brother right now. He literally told me last week, he's like, I know
You can get him to listen to the podcast, right? Yeah, there you go, right? Nice. So, you talked about this well, and I think talking about people go and they learn these skill sets of an entrepreneurship, and they don't start a business. It's not like they just wasted 14 weeks of their life or a year of their life or whatever. Can you give me some examples of where you've seen that translated to somebody going and working, let's say, for a bigger corporation, or even working for another founder in a startup, even though it's not their startup? Have you seen success there, and what does that look like?
Yeah, I tell people all the time, go work for somebody. Like, you have an idea, there's nothing wrong with going and working for somebody first. Sometimes you can go and incubate your idea inside of somebody else's company in a safe, secure way before you go out and take a huge risk. And then, you know, I deal with a lot of nonprofits, and so helping nonprofits understand how to be more innovative and be more strategic. And there's just so much replication of efforts. I know in this community and other communities, I think a lot of times people just don't do a systematic review of what else is out there. It's like, oh, I have a new idea for an app that lets you order food. It's like, well, have you heard of Delay? Like, no, what's that? Like, you haven't even done your homework.
Right.
You know, so I think people are not actually doing the homework to figure out who are the customers, what is the problem, and how are they currently getting that problem addressed right now.
Yeah.
And there's just not enough of that.
Yeah.
Or they say, well, nobody's addressing it. And of course, you know, that's always a red flag to us. Like, there's no competition. Like, really? There's no competition? Or are you just lazy and you just haven't actually gone out?
And there's some basic math behind it, right? So you figure for every, let's just say that, you know, for every startup that has, you know, 10 people working in it, probably one or two of them are the founders. Everybody else is an employee or is sharing the vision of whatever that startup is. And so just mathematically speaking, if you're going to be involved in a small business, a startup, a new business, emerging business, however you want to phrase it, you're 80% likely to be one of the employees, whatever that means. And I think that sometimes people go like, they're like dismissive of that opportunity, of that experience. And then I just recently shared this, I'm gonna get your 2 cents on this. I just recently shared this, but I was thinking about Shipt, right? Everybody's talking about Shipt, and rightfully so. And, you know, inevitably Bill Smith. And Bill is an incredible CEO, incredible founder. But think about the 35 or so kind of middle management folks that just became the only 35 people in town that have been on that kind of rocket ship, knows what it takes to go from $0 to a massive exit to Target in less than 3 years. You are literally one of 35 individuals that is not named Bill Smith, that only knows what it takes to do that. I mean, think about that.
And just imagine if you were employee number 8 and you got stock options. You know,
That would
I'd
be
much
nice
rather
too.
be employee number 8 than be on my 8th business
Right.
and 8 of them have failed
Right.
already.
Right.
You know, so I think you bring up a good point. We're talking about our students and training about innovation and entrepreneurship. We need to be training them, go join the startup. I'm actually thinking about joining the startup right now. I've been thinking about, you know what, I got the startup idea. I actually launched one a couple years ago, but because I was trying to get tenure, I put it off to the side so I get the safe, cushy job. And then I was told myself, once I get tenure, I'm gonna go back and relaunch relaunch my company. But now I'm thinking, you know what? Why relaunch when I got Velocity Accelerator right here? It's 105 startups in here. A lot of them would love to have a faculty in residence, if you will. And maybe they'll give me some stock options. Maybe they pay me, I don't know. But, you know, it's just getting myself a lot closer to the action. I think is beneficial to my students as well as to myself.
I think it's also too, from the standpoint of, I think it's interesting from the standpoint of, we often talk about, you know, talent, the need to have really good talent to support startups in a growing kind of startup ecosystem. One of the things, and it tends to be that we start to center around technology talent. So literally engineering talent, development talent, all that stuff. And trust me, we desperately need it, right? And there are a lot of programs in Birmingham working night and day to try to improve that. But there is a huge need for sales, operations, administration, legal, creative. These are all what I would call non-technical positions that we also need, because at some point in time you can have the best technology in the world, and as we've been talking about, if you can't find a buyer for it, it's worthless. I mean, I hate to say that, it sounds awful, but it's the truth, right? And so the ability for people who have maybe spent, you know, 10 years at a AT&T, or 10 years at a Regions, or 5 years at a BBVA, or 4 years at a Blue Cross Blue Shield, whatever it is, and they decide now is the time for me to go in and risk it as an employee or as a member of a startup, I really wish we could get people to consider that more often than they are. And maybe it's a safety issue, maybe it's a risk aversion, right? It's all the reasons why you don't do it or wouldn't consider it.
But you know, sometimes you just want to be in the environment. And, you know, so I think you bring up a good point. So yesterday I actually was in North Dakota. Who knew that Microsoft, I think their second largest location is in Fargo, North Dakota? Who knew? So I had opportunity.
I definitely did not know that.
So it's a massive, massive campus with all kind of buildings, whatever over there. So I'm there, I'm going on tours, I'm talking to employees. And I'm thinking everybody there's like Harvard, MIT, everybody's computer science and coders. And it totally wasn't. It's like they had salespeople and marketing people and people that just answered the phone. Like, it's just a whole range of people that worked at this huge Microsoft place. So to your point, you can still work in tech and not actually have to be somebody that's a coder or a software engineer or what have you.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of benefits of just being in that space.
Yeah, and North Dakota is a good example of it's not always where you expect to find it either. You know, Anthony and I, before we got on air, he asked me, he said, have you ever been to Fargo? And I said, no. And he goes, you ever been to North Dakota? I said, no. And my retort to that was, if I haven't been to Fargo, I probably had no reason to go to North Dakota. Now, he quit back with Bismarck because he's smarter than I am, but I haven't been to either of those places. So sorry, North Dakota, I'll have to put you on the bucket list. So something that just recently happened, and I want to highlight this because I'm proud for you, if that's a thing. But you were just the mace holder and commencement speaker at UAB's spring graduation. And so first of all, congratulations, that's a huge honor. So what did that mean to you? You talked very well and very eloquently about how I had this professional career and then I decided to go into academics, and that academics gave me a platform to get more involved in the service side of the stuff. Is that some sort of recognition of what you've accomplished as an academic, being able to do that, be the mace holder and do the commencement speech?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, it's a huge honor. I mean, being able to carry this academic mace and give the commencement speech, like, first of all, typically these are two different roles. Somebody carries the mace, somebody else does a commencement speech. I think this is one of the first time they let somebody do both of those. So yeah, it was a lot of validation to me to know that the things that I'm doing are valued by the university and by the university's administration. So that was huge for me. I think for me it also came full circle, and I talked about this during my commencement speech, is that I dropped out of college. You know, when I first went off to college, I studied engineering. My freshman years, I was at Tennessee State. Grades weren't good because I was too busy playing cards and hanging out. Transferred to Alabama, year and a half of doing more of the same, not going to class, hanging out with my friends. I got put on academic probation, GPA is 1.9. And I was like, you know what, I'm just wasting time. I was bored. I just dropped out. It wasn't that I couldn't do the work. I just dropped out. And I was dropped out for 4 years. And it wasn't until I found entrepreneurship and I started 4 different businesses that I realized, you know what, I'm really good at business. Maybe that's what I should be focusing on. Now, ironically, I still did get a job at the phone company in engineering, but my undergrad is in business, my MBA I have an MBA, and my PhD is in entrepreneurship. But to go from somebody that dropped out of college, that during that time didn't think I was ever going to go back to college, to to then be the commencement speaker and carry the mace, yeah, that was full circle. I mean, that was, you know, not to get too spiritual or whatever, but you know, it was very fulfilling, put it that way.
Yeah, is it fair to say that was kind of a milestone for you, at least in that kind of the academic side of your career?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, because again, going back to what I said earlier, I think we do have some, you know, some snobbishness in academia to where I think a lot of people look at the stuff that I do in the community and they think you're not a true academic. But then to have the work that I do validated by my university, I think that sends signals to other people who pull me off to the side, like, dude, I love what you're doing. I can't do it, but I'm secretly cheering for you because I'm trying to get tenure, I'm trying to get promoted to full professor or what have you. And if I do that, then there's no way that I'm going to be tenured.
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to do is innovate academia and let people know there are alternative paths should you want to take them. But again, you got to be bold, you got to be, you know, innovative, and you just got to do it. You got to take a risk. And for me, the stuff that I've been doing over the past 5-6 years truly has been risky to my career.
Yeah, that's great.
And it ought not be risky. It should be commonplace.
No, it should be rewarded, right? I mean,
Yes.
even so much, it shouldn't be a hazard. It should be the exact opposite, which is those who take the risks should be acknowledged for taking those risks and you know, for lack of a better term, speaking truths when they need to be spoken.
I think it's going to change because if not, you're going to have faculty members that are going to leave academia and go into corporate, like we've already seen. Or you have these alternatives to going to get a 4-year education, like going to a coding boot camp or just getting a 2-year degree. People are like, you know what, I'm not going to put up with this whole academic thing. I'm just going to go cut to the chase because I either want to make an impact or I want to actually make money and not have $80,000 worth of student loans when I finish.
Yeah, that's really good stuff. All right, totally different question.
All right.
So at one point you had a pretty impressive sneaker collection. Do you still have a pretty impressive sneaker collection?
Yes and no.
Okay.
It always depends.
Okay, fair enough.
So, to answer your question, you know, I tore my Achilles right before Thanksgiving. And so I'm still rehabbing, still coming back. And I think my surgical repair foot is bigger than the other now. And so some of my shoes don't fit like they used to. So I have a smaller cross-section of my shoes that are actually comfortable right now.
But I've seen pictures on social media, and I don't know that my wife has that many shoes. I'm just saying, nothing. You know.
Well, what you probably saw on social media was the bookstore on campus went out of business, and I bought 75 pair of
Did you really?
Nikes from them.
Were they all just different kinds, or the same kind, or?
They were different kinds. But they had been sitting there for like 4 weeks, and every time I would walk past there, I would see those same shoes. Like, somebody's got to buy these shoes. I went there one day, shoes had been marked down at $25 a pair. These
Shoes for life. Never buy them again.
Went back 2 weeks later. I came down and said, you know what? I'm gonna go ahead and buy these shoes. I said, are they still $25? They said, no, they're not. I was like, how much are they? She said, they're 75% off. I said, 75% off what? She said, 75% off $25. So I bought 75 pairs of shoes for $6.25.
Well, this kind of moots my question, but I'll ask it anyway.
Well, let me finish.
Okay.
So I berated my students because I told my students, like, look, how many of y'all saw all those shoes at Snoozie's bookstore for the past 6 weeks? And everybody's like, yeah, I saw those shoes, but I didn't pay any attention. And that was a teaching moment. I was like, that was an arbitrage opportunity.
No.
Because you had a product that was probably 80% less than what the true market value is, but you weren't entrepreneurially aware to recognize the opportunity. I was like, so I made them calculate how much money I could actually make off those 75 pairs of shoes if I sold them at 20% less than what the market value
Right.
is, as opposed to 80%.
Right.
And so now it's like, oh, I get it now. And I tell them, like, there are entrepreneurial opportunities around us all the time. We just have to be aware of them.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, and I know that you've done things like this in the past, but I have seen that where that's done, which is part of the assignment is go find something that's undervalued that you can purchase and then either make small improvements to, economically viable improvements to, or not, just arbitrage, and you pass them along for profit. So but here's my question. So of all the cool different kinds of sneakers you had, what's a favorite pair you've ever had?
I got some Nike Knit Fly, some kind of shoes. I don't even know what the name of.
You're not really selling them very well.
I'm not.
No,
I don't
they're
know
knit
about that.
fly. You know, more for you at a discount, right?
I am frustrated at how expensive tennis shoes are getting.
Yeah.
Like Adidas knit shoes that I'm sure only cost $15 to make. now they're close to $200 for running shoes.
It's so funny you said that, because I was just having this conversation with somebody was going to a local charity where what doesn't require you, but encourages you to wear Chuck Taylors, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I asked him, he says, oh, I don't have any Chucks, I gotta go buy them. And I'm like, man, wait for the sticker shock that you're gonna have when you go in there. Because I've seen them go for like $60. And I'm like, I'm sorry, but those crappy sneakers should be like free with a cheeseburger. Like they're barely shoes and they're here for $6, so to your point.
Yeah.
I will tell you, I had the original Jordans before they were Jordans.
Really?
Yep, the
What
black.
do you mean before they were Jordans?
So they were the Nike, I gotta remember the symbol, but they were the red, black, and white.
Yeah, basketball with the wings on?
Yes,
Uh-huh.
but that was before they were actually Jordans, right? They hadn't been called Jordans at that
They
point.
were Air Jordans.
Wow, I had an original pair of Air Jordans.
Jordan 1s, I think that's what we call them.
Man, what would those have been worth if I had never worn them and just put them in a shoebox? Who knows?
A
All right.
lot more than what you paid for.
Yeah, another arbitrage opportunity. There we go. And on that, ladies and gentlemen, would you put your hands together for Dr. Anthony Hood? Your audience,
So,
your
y'all,
professor.
So my man is flipping houses, like those are arbitrage opportunities, right? You look across, you see a house like, oh, I can buy this house for 50 grand, but I know that it's really worth 120. Like those opportunities are always out there.
Yeah, yeah. Especially now, right? Because now you have the land trust, right? Opportunities.
Land bank.
Excuse me. You have the land bank opportunities now, which is good. And then the mayor's office, City Hall, has just talked about how they're going to accelerate knocking down condemned houses and houses that are considered blight, which basically creates fresh new lots for somebody to build something new and invest in money.
Or the next door neighbor just gets a lot of expands their property line and now you increase the value of the property.
That's great. That's great, for sure. What questions do you guys have? The first one's always slow and they just accelerate.
Yeah, I had a question about, sorry, I had missed this, but did you have in mind maybe any other business programs at UAB to get people involved in skills that are in demand in Birmingham but aren't being met? Because there are some of those business skills, like, especially in finance, like quantitative finance, that's the thing, operations research. I'm sure if you don't have an operations management background, you know what I'm talking about. So really quantitative skills. And there's a big demand for them in Birmingham, and we have 4 or 5 insurance companies headquartered here, I think companies a bank. So these guys need quantitative business skills like industrial engineering, economics, quantitative finance, but there's no program for that at all in Birmingham. We have a master's of accounting, we have an MBA program, and they're great, but I mean, I heard you went to the speech last Friday, and you talked about sitting down with Tim Cook, and he's now been a native, and his undergrad was in industrial engineering.
Yeah.
Right now, he's running out.
Yeah, it worked out for him.
I would say a war eagle with the guy I'm sitting next to, but I won't.
That's
Go
fair,
ahead.
sure,
Sorry.
sure.
Yes.
Well, yeah, I think, do you think it would be a good idea to have more of these programs offering skill sets in Birmingham?
Yes. But it's one of those things where you don't want to have the fallacy of if you build it, they will come. I think the challenge for us is, number one, we always have to make sure that we're quantifying the market. Like, if we offer this and students take it, will people actually hire them? And so that's always a challenge. The other thing is, from an accreditation standpoint, our state accreditation body wants to make sure that we're not duplicating efforts across state. So, say for instance, if Alabama has that same program and UAB wants it, it's like, well, Alabama has it, so we don't want to compete with them. How can you come up with distinctive programming? So we have to come up with something that maybe complements it. So that's another, nuance that we always have to think about. And then the other thing we have to think about is who's going to teach the classes. So every time we come up with a new program, it's like, okay, now we got to go out and hire 3 or 4 more faculty members. And business faculty members make a lot of money. I mean, you're talking minimum $150,000 for finance people, sometimes $200,000. So, and that's not even including benefits. So you got to think, okay, what's going to be enrollment? If it's only going to be 8 students a year that's going to take the programming, but we're having to spend $800,000 in salary and benefits, then the ROI is just not there.
The other thing too, and I would say this, you talked about kind of advanced finance. One of the things that I would challenge everybody with is entrepreneurs that aren't going through, or small business owners that haven't gone through a business program at UAB. We have a real issue with basic finance, like understanding the basics of how, everything. Everything from cash flow, the big three, right? P&Ls, income statements, statement of cash flow, like the big ones, right? And then, but importantly is, you'll hear this a lot, but you'll hear entrepreneurs go, I'm really happy because I don't have any debt. And I go, that's not the right answer, right? They don't understand how to use debt as an instrument, right? And so there's some basic fundamental things. And one of the things that Devin talked about last week and I thought was really a good point was that we as a community have to start filling in gaps backwards for that, for people who don't have that. Maybe they're coming from an engineering background and they don't have the finance. We've got to figure out how to get them at least up to a working knowledge of that. And I will tell you firsthand experience, I was a professional and a pretty well-compensated professional at a private equity firm for 15 years into my career. That's when I took my first basic accounting and finance class. And it changed my life. As far as, I'm an idiot when it comes to that stuff, don't get me wrong. But I understood the basics enough to understand why it mattered. So I think that there's another step in there as well.
Okay, I agree, but there are programs to study that in town.
Agreed.
If you are a work professional like you were, you have the opportunity to take a class maybe. Whereas there's big demand for data scientists, and UAB just now, data science has been huge, honestly, for like 10 or 15 years, and UAB just now got a program in. And it is the only one in Wisconsin State. I think it's going to be great. It's going to start in the fall. But there are other things like operations research and like quantitative finance that a little bit related to data science, a little bit related to math, a little bit related to business, but they also kind of do everything.
Sure.
And it'd be great to have a program like that.
Well, the other challenge with entrepreneurship and just business in general is figuring out what you want to do, but also figuring out the things that you're not going to do. And we have to be disciplined to know that we can't be all things to everybody. And just because something is good, that doesn't mean that we have to be the ones that do it. Particularly when we're still struggling to execute on some of the things that we already have on the shelf. It's like we're trying to develop new products. We're like, well, shoot, you ain't sold the products you already got, so let's sell those first. Demonstrate some success with that, and then move on to something else.
Sure.
And then we run out of space. So, you guys know we're building a new school of business that we'll be moving into in, in June, end of June, beginning of July. So that's going to free up some more stuff too for us. Sir?
Anthony, I've seen a lot of your work in academics and essentially entrepreneurship. How do you prepare the students for, one, life after school and entrepreneurship in Birmingham or elsewhere?
Yeah. So I try to make it just experiential. Again, I try to get my students out of the classroom. And I'll be honest with you, now that we're not on the mic, I've had my hand slapped several times because people have come around and done like room checks. Be like, hey, Anthony, you're supposed to be teaching a class Wednesday 4:30 to 7. I came to my classroom at 5:30 and nobody was in there. I'm like, yeah, I took my student on a field trip. Well, when are you going to teach? What do you mean when am I going to teach? Like,
I was.
I actually took them to the commercialization accelerator and let them see my
I never stopped teaching. When am I going to stop?
So the challenge is you operate in this organizational system that again, sometimes the incentive systems is not aligned with, I think, what's reality. So for me is I have my students work on strategic management plans, but instead of having them working on Costco and Walmart, some fictitious organization, I actually take them out into the community, find an organization, and actually get them hands-on experience. Then, oh, by the way, that gives the employer opportunity to observe some students like, you know what, that guy Kenny, I like him. Like, what is he doing after graduation? Let me put you guys together.
Yeah.
So I think those are the things that I try to do. And also I have them do like personal strategic management plans. So they have to come up with like a personal mission, personal vision, personal values. I have them create their own board of directors of their mentor network. So have them do their own P&Ls and their own cash flow statements. A lot of my students have never actually done a budget before. These are graduating seniors about to be making more money than they've ever made in their life right after graduation and don't even have a budget.
Mm-hmm.
So those are some of the things that I do. And I get a lot of complaining about it, I think, during class, but then after graduation, they're like, oh my God, I'm so glad you made me do that. Like, imagine that, I actually know what I'm doing.
Yeah, go figure. After all these classes and all these students.
Right, yeah.
I listened to a lot of what you said, and I really respect it. And I want to make sure I ask this question properly, because I don't see a lot of people touching on it at all. How come people from your academic level, professors, doctorate, master, why are they not teaching the younger generation how to fail? I've worked with like 8 to 9 different startups in this area between Cincinnati to here. I've helped 4.5 of them succeed. The other ones failed miserably. They pretty much quit on life. They don't know how to handle it. They don't know how to take no. They run and split. They go bankrupt. They don't know how to stick it and finish cutting the grass, if you know what I'm saying. What can you do to like help somebody like, educate somebody like me to continue to help those people grow? Because they need leaders, not people telling them what to do. They need people to help them push through the hard parts in the business. What can you teach me or us about failure?
I think you just have to create an environment consistently where failure is rewarded. To where you need to just come up with some kind of incentive system, and it just depends on the organization or whoever you're working with. But are there ways that we can find, some low risk, some low impact type of failures to where if you fail, maybe we got a bell like, oh God, you just failed, Like I went to Stanford last
I
summer.
know it's cliche, and I know everyone in the world wants to be an entrepreneur, but if they can't get punched in the face and stand back up and work, they don't need to be in that game.
But
go get a job.
Let me jump in here, because I think one of the things is we don't as a community, and I think Serge can talk about this too, because he's going through it right now. But we don't as a community yet accept and even forgive failure like we should. And in other ecosystems, and I don't mean to step on this, but I think probably part of what you're talking, where you're going with this is it only accepted, it's somewhat celebrated. Like, you're not a real entrepreneur until you've had a failure. Now, that isn't to say that they want you to go out there and waste a bunch of investor money or all that stuff. What they are talking about is, yes, I took $200,000 of seed money from one angel investor and it flopped. I failed. I couldn't get it done. I did all this work and come to find out there's a patent troll and then stole my idea, right? Or something like that, which happens all the time. And you learn and you pick yourself up and you go. But the environment creates the opportunity for that. That is not necessarily just an individual saying I can or I can't, because an individual has a financial a requirement to go out there and fend for themselves, where an environment isn't like, I see that you did this, I see where you made a mistake, let's learn from that, okay, let's help you get the next opportunity. And part of that includes, and Anthony and Serge have both seen this, not to pick on you guys, but you've both seen this, right? Which is, it may not be I start my next thing, I go and I work with somebody else, right? And say, hey, I'm gonna go work with, my company didn't make it, I'm gonna go work with Serge, right? He's got something that's cool, what's going on and all of that stuff. I think that's it.
What if I had a startup, it failed, but then Alabama Power was like, hey, come work for us because you have a nice, valuable skill set.
That we don't have.
Maybe you're now a little bit more risk averse, which we like.
Very much so.
And so I think, community, to your point, some communities celebrate that, and they're looking for people who have had a business, failed, and then they want to pick them back up and put them back on the right track.
So really,
like give them a job or what have you. I think the other thing is we have to celebrate the pivot.
Yeah.
Because sometimes the pivot is somewhat of a failure too, right? I thought this was one thing, but then I failed. It wasn't the right customer segment. It wasn't the right product market fit. It didn't work. But then I pivoted to something else, and we need to celebrate that. I mean,
a pivot is a failure with a little runway left, right? I mean, that's really the difference. So I think it's a really good point. I think part of it just comes at bats. We need to give people at bats, right? We don't do newer, emerging, fledgling kind of startup ecosystems, which I would definitely squarely put Birmingham in there. We're doing better every day. But in those systems, we haven't yet to get a point where these young founders are getting multiple at-bats.
And I'm going to pitch this to Max. So Max runs, I don't know if you guys know Max, but Max runs our accelerator on campus at the business school. And so he does this.
By the way,
just had demo day.
Just had a hell of a candidate come up for demo day, by the way. Very good. That was, if you didn't see that, you should talk to Max after.
So Max, do you guys celebrate failure? I mean, like every week they come in, they have to report on what they did the previous week, right? So have you guys created an environment where failure is okay?
It's necessary with entrepreneurship education, right? It's I forget what's the quote, but I didn't fail 100 times, learned 100 things that don't work, right?
Right.
That's not the same.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's
I didn't fail. I learned 100 ways not to make the light bulb or whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, right? It's that kind of thing, because, with entrepreneurship, whatever stat you look at, failure is so high, you have to almost, expect it. And, if you expect it, you learn how to de-risk it, right? And that's where you talk about testing assumptions, right? Because I think the biggest thing you do is they don't know their customers, they don't know the pain points they're trying to solve, because they never talk to the customer, right? So if you're going to keep failure top of mind, you naturally learn how to de-risk it. And that's something that's very important.
I am going to give one more question to you, sir, in the back.
I'm gonna ask this question this way. So we touched on a lot of these points. Great job, by the way. I think first and foremost, we've touched on these points really at the end of the cycle. So when that person is out of college or out of high school, wherever they're in that space. And so to ask a question, I'll tell a story first. I've got this kid who was junior high or sophomore in high school, good athlete. He fixes phones. So I said, Deuce, bring me a business plan the next time I see you. And he goes, what do you mean? I said, well, you think you're gonna play ball in college? I don't know, I might. Cool. I said, you can fix phones, right? Yeah. I said, well, you were late to your appointment with me today because you had to fix the phone. How much money did you make? I made $75. I said, okay. So my time is valuable. You're 15 minutes late. I need to cut it to $75. All right. And he goes, what do you mean? I said, Deuce, you're paying me for my time. I could have been generating other revenue stream at that time. I said, no, so you fix phones. Next visit, he comes in, oh, I've got to go cut grass for a living. When I leave here, how many yards you have? He tells me. I said, you got any employees? He goes, well, no, not really. I just have some of my friends up there. I said, okay, so Deuce, you have contract employees? He goes, well, yeah, I guess. I said, Deuce, again, bring me a business plan the next time I see you. I said, every time I see you, I'm going to ask you the same thing. And he sat back and said, Deuce, let me tell you why I'm asking you this. One, I know that you have above average intelligence. Two, I know you know how to work. The third thing is, you like nice things. And over the course of your life, you don't really have to work for anyone. I told him saying that. So I'm 37 years old. I've never worked for anyone. He's like, well, what do you mean? Because I've always worked with people. When I left the job, I either had skills that I didn't have before, experience that I didn't have before, or I knew what I did not want to do the rest of my life. So when we look at this, and we're kind of talking about this from this standpoint, to me, it's we have to ask the question in terms of, are we looking at the wrong end of the spectrum? My man here talked about people not being willing to fail. Resilience can be taught, right? Nietzsche says, if you know the why, you can stand in the what. So are we not looking at the wrong end of the spectrum when we look at resilience, when we look at a certain amount of moxie as it relates to entrepreneurship, and looking at the 25, 26, 30-year-old folks, should we not be doing that in elementary school where that kid sees, the opportunity to sell a box of snacks?
So I've worked with a lot of groups over the last several years, and everybody talks about the same thing. We need to have a continuum of entrepreneurship in Birmingham. We need to understand what is the pipeline. You and I have talked about this with Mickey. We need to have a pipeline of let's begin with the end in mind. Yes, we want people to be spinning out of the velocity accelerator, and we want the next ship. How do we reverse engineer all that back to what are the experience they need to have in college, high school, middle school, in order to predispose them to that, help them fail early, and then build the confidence through which and the resilience through which, by the time they get to high school or college, we're now ready to go into advanced topics. So by the time they get to me, I teach all graduating seniors. Now I can go into advanced topics and not still be talking about what is the cash flow statement. Like, you should have had that in Finance 300 3 semesters ago. And now I'm remediating what you should have gotten several semesters ago. What happens if they get that in high school? So you got organizations like Birmingham Education Foundation that's helping with this work. Junior Achievement has been doing it for I don't know how long. DECA.
Yeah, Birmingham Ed is a good example. They got got what middle schoolers pitching now, right?
They do.
That's pretty
They
awesome.
do. They're using a version of the co-starters model to expose.
And Anthony and I have talked about this before, and there's some basic stuff we can do. So, for example, like we talked about this, and I know Dion Gordon's working on this, but I said we should be scholarshiping high school seniors from Birmingham City schools that aren't going to go to a 4-year university or a 2-year university right off the bat, that they want to go into entrepreneurship, right? And so how do we get them into Tech Birmingham at a massively reduced fee or even free based on an application system, grant system, however we want to do it, and get them into that community? Can you imagine what a jumpstart that is to be surrounded by a bunch of people who are willing to get involved and mentor and all of those things?
And I would be remiss not to say this. I think when we talk about inclusion in entrepreneurship and economic development, one of the things I didn't say is, I think we tend to look down our nose at the small business owners. You know, I think we need to be very careful that we're not building an ecosystem to where if you're not building a high-tech, high-growth startup that is trying to scale up to take on $1 million worth of seed funding, then you're not really doing anything. We need to be very careful about not going down that route. I mean, the guy that puts a lawnmower in the back of his trunk and mows lawns, is that person an entrepreneur? A lot of people are like, no, he's not an entrepreneur because he doesn't have an app. Does he have an app to help him schedule all the lawns? You know, and so there's, you know, and those are one of the things that frustrates me because we're cutting out a whole segment, I think, of our community when we just focus on the high-tech, high-growth types of businesses. Who helps them? When they come to me and says, hey, I need some help I need to buy another lawnmower because business is great. Like, but I'm wearing out lawnmowers too fast. Can you help me get to scale on that?
Yeah.
I can't help you build an app.
Why would you?
Why would I?
Yeah,
You
right.
don't need that.
Go cut some grass.
You gotta meet people where they actually need it. And that's what we need to be doing from an economic development standpoint. Those are some things that maybe the city can help out.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Anthony Hood. So the next workshop's coming in. Please feel free to stay for that. I think it's going to be really worthwhile. We're going to get our stuff out of here. All right? Thank you, everybody.
So, man. Good job. Hey, thank you, man.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming.
Hey, so I added Ashley Simmons onto it. She hasn't yet responded. Would you mind with what is it? Black. I was asking you about the, and I'll show you right now.
Okay.
Ashley Barnes.